This is the World Organic News for the week ending 19th of March 2018. Jon Moore reporting. As I discussed last month with the new vision statement for the podcast and blog, Decarbonise the air, recarbonise the soil in mind, I'm calling on my listeners to put forward ideas for an interview episode once a month. If you know anyone who is doing either part of the vision, I'd love to hear from them. Or indeed from you if you're on the front line doing the work. This week I'm going back to first principles. And what are these first principles? Well, I'm glad you asked. There are, to my mind, three basic truths to earth-friendly gardening farming. 1, no digging ploughing. 2, no bare soil. And 3, no chemicals. I am aware these fly in the face of 10,000 years of agricultural horticultural practice. So let's look at what those 10,000 years have created, shall we? From the Iowa State University Extension and Outreach page, quote, "Tillage has all along been contributing negatively to soil quality. Since tillage fractures the soil, disrupts soil structure and accelerating surface runoff and soil erosion, tillage also reduces crop residue, which help cushion the force of pounding raindrops. Without crop residue, soil particles become more easily dislodged, being moved or splashed away. This process is only the beginning of the problem. Splashed particles clog soil pores, effectively sealing off the soil's surface, resulting in poor water infiltration. The amount of soil loss from Iowa farming each year is directly related to soil structure, levels of crop residue remaining on the soil surface, and the intensity of tillage practices." End quote. Basically, ploughing to turn crop residue under, a practice designed to increase soil organic matter, destroys soil structure, seals the soil from the atmosphere, and leads to soil erosion. Remember, no soil, no food. While soil erosion is a cumulative effect, eventually only subsoil and bedrock is left if the system continues to its logical conclusion. Over the past 10,000 years, from the very beginning of agriculture, new land was available for cultivation, or topsoils were so deep the losses were not so catastrophic. We have reached a point now where urban populations are covering those deeper soils, or they are gone. Land better suited to grazing is being put to the plough as animals are confined as factory widgets in feedlots, rather than as ecosystem components, where their grazing improves the grass cover, soil health and the soil carbon. Think about the removal of the bison from the North American plains and the eventual Dust Bowl of the 1930s, and this appears to have been a common line of cause and effect across human history. So to first principle number 1, no digging. This is most easily understood in a garden context. The best way to do this, I've found, is in raised beds. Raised beds are created by piling organic matter, compost, animal bedding, decomposed leaf mould, that sort of thing, onto organic mat of some sort. I find cardboard is ideal, newspapers work well too. Podcast footnote. For our younger listeners, just Google newspapers to discover how we used to consume news in the olden days. End podcast footnote. To plant in this material, simply use your fingers to push larger seeds into the organic material. To plant seedlings, a cut is made with a knife, and the now topsoil is opened, the seedling inserted, and the cut closed by pressure. It is actually much easier to do than it is to describe. Larger implements have been developed for doing this on an agricultural scale. They basically consist of a knife blade followed by a seeder, followed by wheels, reclosing the cut. The timing in agricultural settings is important. If planting into pasture, this needs to be done and timed to coincide with the dieback of summer or winter growing species, so autumn and spring. If part of a cereal rotation, then into the stubble from the previous harvest. If you're following the Fukuoka method, then seed is simply broadcast over the growing cereal crop a couple of weeks before it's harvested. The new crop is growing when the old is harvested, and as a general rule survives the harvest without any dramas. The straw from the harvest is spread over the new crop and it pushes through that. The systems to avoid digging have been developed. They are in growing use and the world's soils are better for it. No digging goes hand in glove with principle number 2, no bare soil. In a garden context, this means overplanting when observed from a conventional standpoint. The effect of this is to protect the organic material growing medium and provide extra harvests of other organic material. Let me explain. As the plants grow, some stems are edible, more food. Those that are not are thinned out as the leaves grow to cover the soil. The thin plants are dropped on the soil surface protecting the soil, decomposing into it and giving space for the other growing plants to expand. In an agricultural setting, it means leaving stubble and shredded stalks covering the soil. These then become food for soil biota as they protect the soil from wind and water erosion. As the soil biota pull this material into the soil structure, they are actually adding carbon to the soil. When soils are left bare, they leak carbon in the form of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. So covered soils have the double effect of reducing CO2 emissions and drawing carbon out of the atmosphere to create more complex, more richly alive soils, which grow stronger plants. Win, win, win. Principle number 3, no chemicals. This includes fertilisers, pesticides, herbicides and fungicides. Why? Well, basically they destroy soil structure, soil biota and plant coverage, thereby violating both of the other principles. They may not turn the soil, but by killing off the soil biota they achieve the same effect. Now, it is possible to grow things by ploughing, having bare soil and spraying chemicals, but, and this is a big but, this is a Faustian bargain. The cost of this system is first and foremost topsoil. Not much, but enough to have an effect over time, say 1% per year, for industrial farming. This is the obvious effect. We now know there are other less visible effects. They relate to both soil and atmospheric carbon, as well as nitrous oxide from nitrogen-based fertilisers. The longer the soil is bare, the more CO2 it dissipates. The long-term effects of this in human terms is parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere above 400. This has the effect of rendering many areas of agricultural practice unsuitable for purpose. The grape growers from episode 107 are an example. Excessive use of monetarily cheap nitrogen fertiliser leads to nitrous oxide leaking into the atmosphere, and it too is a greenhouse gas. If we avoid, or better yet decline to use synthetic additives, we gain better soils, a more benign climate with the twin benefits of CO2 not leaking into the atmosphere and soil carbon percentages improving. We lower input costs and break the farmer chemical company dependence cycle. This takes courage, but it can be done. So in summary, there are 3 principles for good organic growing. 1, no digging, tilling, no bare soil and no chemical inputs. By following these 3 principles, a farmer can free themselves from debt, grow healthier soil and thereby healthier plants and animals, and they lower the demand for chemicals and the profit incentive for chemical companies to produce these soil-destroying substances. All of the above effects also leads to healthier environments, waterways, and yes, people. And with that, I'll draw this episode to a conclusion. Remember, decarbonise the air, recarbonise the soil. As a podcast listener, you may be thinking of producing your own podcast, but you're not sure where to begin. Drop over to mrjonmoore.com. There's a link in the show notes and check out my course. I have been teaching this at community colleges around town and have developed an online version. Classes start whenever you're ready, and I'd love to help you out in this way of communicating. A transcript for this episode is available at worldorganicnews.com. Thanks for listening, and I'll be back next week.